Okay, guys, I am super excited to welcome our next guest to Let's Get Freaky. We have got Ron and Lourdes with us today. Did I say the names right?
You did.
I
Absolutely did. Yay!
Especially hers.
Yes.
That is a landmark here in the United States for sure.
Yacovetti as well was the second name.
Yes,
I
that is
was
mine.
I was going to
Yep.
completely avoid that, but
No,
that's
that's good. See, like an investigator of
You did.
paranormal, you took your fears head on.
that's it.
Did
I
excellent.
just went for it, and I done it. Names is always the big thing for me. I just always want to get people's names perfect. Once that's done, I'm fine.
Her nickname ended up becoming Loki because we have a friend, Anthony Simonelli from the Seekers Club of the Paranormal in Queens, New York, and he could not say it. He said Lotus, Lodi, Locust,
Everything in the book.
and then finally it ended up being Loki, and then that just stuck.
Yep. Loki.
Well, I got it first time, so there we go.
Yeah.
I'll take that. So you guys are in New Jersey. We just spoke about
Yes.
that before. Cool part of the world. Awesome stuff. Can we go to the beginning for you guys with the paranormal? Where does it all start for you guys?
That's a good question because that's gonna spread us all across the map a little bit. She has a family history that
Well, the beginning for me is the beginning. My family, they practice espiritismo, which is a form of mediumship in the Caribbean.
Okay.
So I grew up with it. But then I saw something that kind of like terrified me, and I shied away from it for a very long time, even though I was still interested. And then I met him, and then it got me back into it. So,
Can I ask you what it was that terrified you? Can we talk about that?
well, I'm sorry, I have mints in my mouth.
That's cool. That's cool.
But they were doing a ceremony, like a ritual, and my cousin was channeling spirit. So the spirit was in her, and my mom, from 10, 11 children, she was the only one that didn't practice espiritismo. But we were there, supporting the family or whatever. And so when my cousin was channeling, she bumped into my mom. And when she bumped into my mom, the spirit jumped from my cousin to my mom. Well, I say jump, but to be honest with you, they were both under the influence. So my cousin was still under the influence, but when she bumped into my mom, then my cousin and my mom were under the influence. So when me and my brother saw that, we were very young, it terrified me. So then I just wasn't with it. I would get upset with my mom when she said she was going and argue with her and tell her why is she doing this or why she's doing that. But whatever. And then, I became an adult and kind of grew up. And then I met this one.
who never grew up, but has aspirations of adulthood. Yes, I do. I've heard it's pretty cool.
He got me back into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
I got her into it. So we're in New Jersey, right across the Hudson River from New York City. So if you go down South River from us, you get to the Statue of Liberty. So we're maybe a couple miles upriver,
Nice.
just off the coast of the river from where that is for a marker. So I'm from here, but for 14 years I lived in Los Angeles, and at the time, going back probably close to 12, 13 years ago, I was dating somebody and we didn't agree with anything we wanted to watch on TV. We had 8,000 channels that you pay for, and then until we got to Ghost Adventures, we were like, you're interested in that? All right, I'll watch that. And I've always been fascinated with this stuff since I was little. Any of the shows that had something to do with Bigfoot or ghosts or whatever. So a lot of the locations that those particular seasons early on in Ghost Adventures were doing, some of the locations like the Pico House, David Ullman's house, which is where the Charles Manson, Sharon Tate murders happened in '69, the Glen Tavern Inn in Santa Paula. There were a lot of locations that were close to Queen Mary, in Long Beach, California. So we started going, and then it took root for me. And when I moved back here to the East Coast in 2013, I was thinking there wasn't really a lot to do as far as locations and places because I didn't know anything. I really didn't know anybody. I got accepted to a team from the team I was with there, I got accepted to a different team in New Jersey, Central Jersey Paranormal Research Group, which is now defunct. And they weren't really doing a lot when I moved back. So I was hearing about places like the Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York, which is about like an hour and a half north of here. And so I was getting a slow start at getting back into it. But once I started realizing there are so many, and I know obviously from where you are in the UK, the history goes back even deeper and there's even older places. But in the United States, the places that have the oldest historic value for people who do what we do, who not is just appreciating paranormal, but also appreciating the history elements of places, the East Coast has most of these older locations from the north part of the East Coast all the way down to the tip of Florida. So I got back into it here, and we met in 2016,
Yes.
right?
Yes, you got it right, honey.
And then
Well
after
done.
that, you're worried about last names. I'm worried about dates. So
Well done,
that's
man.
how we both got into this, and then we both had a fascination with audio, with the audio part of the paranormal, and then eventually, and we'll get to it as we move forward in the show, but we've found this path that we're both really ignited by.
Awesome. So you both had a love for the paranormal before you met, and it's carried
Yeah.
on now. That's cool. Did you have any experiences growing up as a kid, or did you have paranormal experiences? Did you see things or anything like that growing up?
I didn't have any. Well, you know what's funny, because I have 4 books on Amazon I can name later, but I think it was the second or third. I think the second book where I mentioned there's a chapter called The Phantom Drummer. My father was a drummer, and he had a basement room on the bottom sublevel that was soundproofed for the most part. I mean, the neighbors wouldn't complain, but you could kind of hear it in the house a little bit, but not to the point you couldn't watch TV on the second or third floor or even sleep. It was muffled enough. And I remember as a kid, my sister and I were both in our bedrooms on the top floor, which was the third, used to be the attic, and hearing the drums. Now, my father was out playing a gig because he had more than one complete kit or drum set. So he had a kit with him out, but there was still a set downstairs. I remember hearing the drums, and it wasn't my mother, and it wasn't obviously either of us. And so at the time, you're in denial, you're a little bit afraid. I'm like, I just kind of dismissed it. But now when you look back and you go, did you ever have, like, when people ask me what you just asked, that's when I started to reflect and go, have I? And then I'm wondering, I remember that happening. So I would say not in the same way that where her family with practicing a spiritismo, where she had experiences that she knew were spiritual, even if she didn't understand them, but witnessing them. I had, I guess, what you would call a musical haunting, briefly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool though, man. I think a lot of the times when especially when we're younger as well, like things can happen and we can sort of brush it off as imagination and stuff like that. So that's an interesting one though, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
Cool
never thought twice
experience.
about it until flash forward in the last couple of years when I started writing, and I was like, and I just from being on shows and having folks like yourself ask that question, I started looking back on, I don't know what brought it back, but something brought it back.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I've had that when I'm talking, and a memory that an experience that you've had, you're like, how have I not remembered that like before? But it's there somewhere, obviously. But yeah, it's interesting. Interesting
That's what's
stuff.
cool about me, because I had experiences, but because I would have dreams and things would happen, or I would see things and certain things like that, but they believed me because they practiced, the espiritismo. So I had the support of it. Like if I had a dream, they would listen.
Yeah.
They would just ask me details and stuff like that.
So was that
But
like premonitions and things like that?
yeah, it usually had to do with birth and death. I had this good thing about knowing when someone was gonna pass soon or when new life was coming into the world.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know. Yeah.
When you would dream that you'd have a dream and then it would happen.
And it would happen. Yeah. So that would
Oh,
happen a lot to me when I was younger.
wow.
Yeah. It doesn't happen as much anymore.
Yeah. I guess that's quite, because that must be quite difficult as well to, even though that's an amazing thing to have, but it must be difficult as well.
Well, it's funny you say that because there was something that happened to me that I had a premonition of in 2007, and since then it stopped. Like it stopped, and there was a coworker of mine that we worked with, and she was pregnant, and I had a dream, and the dream is I don't know if I want to because it's kind of like the dream was that I could see it was like if I was floating and there was a hospital bed and a woman was in it. There's doctors all around. She gives birth. It's a little girl, but there's something wrong. Like in her vagina, there's like teeth. And I'm like, so when I see that, I wake up and I immediately wake up and I go, oh my God, I don't want to say her name, but I'll say T. I was like, oh my God, T's gonna have a miscarriage. Like I knew immediately, but I didn't relay that information because, what am I gonna? So I kept that with me. And sure enough, she had a miscarriage.
Oh, wow.
And so that happened. But then after that, I had this feeling with her. She would come in every day, and I just felt like this thing of emptiness and nothingness. And I'm like, well, in my mind, I'm like, well, she's probably depressed because she had a miscarriage. I mean, and a month later, she had an aneurysm and died. She passed.
Oh,
And so, and even though I know it's not my fault, I still carried that. And ever since that year, 2007, I remember it in July, I have not had a dream like that. Like I have dreams, but I have a hard time deciphering them now. Before I knew immediately. Now I kind of
yeah.
have difficulties.
I wonder if that's something you've sort of switched off yourself, because that must be difficult. That must be
That's what
really
I'm
difficult.
thinking. I'm thinking I'm doing it my own self. I'm blocking myself.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
thinking.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
because
think
yeah, my wife's got a very similar. I mean, she's not had anything like that, but she has dreams that, like, she'll dream of a friend and that friend will call, or that she's not spoken to for years, stuff like that. Or she had a dream not long ago where she dreamt random stuff like her friend's car broke down or something. The next day it happened. Like dreams like that, not as bad, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that kind of stuff speaks a lot to consciousness, and that we're connected to a unitary consciousness that we're all alters of, or dissociative states. All of us is a dissociative alter or state to a consciousness we're all connected to, and I think that's part of how that stuff happens. And if as some believe, time is not a linear thing in spirit world, or just in through unitary consciousness like that, then the now and the later and the past
sure.
simultaneous. Or because I mean, every time you prophesize or forecast what you expect to happen in the future, it's always now. You never do that in the future. You always do it in the now. And when you will reflect, you're always reflecting in the now.
Yeah, yeah,
So it stands to reason that that might be how some of that stuff happens, because can you chalk that up to coincidence and guesswork? Not after a while, I don't think. I think at some point you got to start looking at something that goes outside of, materialist reductionist science and what they can measure down to the smallest particle. And I don't think that a lot of this stuff, some are hopeful quantum physics and quantum mechanics and engineering and stuff like that was going to be able to fill some of those gaps and answer those things. But until that does happen, if that does happen, and I like to hang my hat on that, because that would be promissory materialism to say at some point there's going to be a measurable, material answer to it. But I think that there's definitely something to that with consciousness. When people investigate and you ask a question with a ghost box, spirit box, EVP, and the answer's there,
yeah,
second you finish, that's superluminal contact. That's faster than speed of light. But if something is not traversing a distance as we know it to travel, like a mechanical sound wave would propagate, but it's already there, then that would explain the instantaneous answer coming through like that, or ahead of or at the same time that you finish speaking. So I mean, there's a lot of theorizing behind it, but these are the things that make more sense to me the
yeah,
more we delve into this.
Right.
yeah, for
So
sure.
if so, it's always out there, so you can get it through dreams, right?
Hmm.
Or through the voices that we get through Staticom or anything like that. because it's a part of a collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And there's many ways to retrieve that information.
Do you think we've all got the ability to be more connected than we are? Do you think
Yeah.
like yourself, maybe you've switched off the dreams that you were having and stuff yourself, but if you wanted to, you could reopen that and, you know.
I believe we can all do it. It's about putting in the work, really honestly. It's just you just gotta practice. You know, if you want to be a bodybuilder, you gotta get over there and
Yeah.
lift up those weights.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're
So
heavy.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you just
Yeah.
it's a routine practice that you should do. You just come up with a routine and you do it
Yeah.
whatever day it is, and you just do it and it'll start getting better. The more you do it, the better it gets.
And when
So
you
yeah.
and she's right. And when you put in the work and you show up, like to go with the metaphor, you go to the gym and you show up and you put in the work and the blood, sweat, and tears, that also speaks to intent and it speaks to focus, right? And so the only reality we can ever know is our psyche, is our self-egoic reflective experiences, which is what we focus on. So I think when she focuses on something like that, the ability would be heightened and enhanced. The same way you can tune into a radio channel and it doesn't mean the rest of the FM or AM band doesn't exist, but your reality, your experience that you're
Yeah.
reflecting upon and know is that moment, that channel. So it's the gentleman named Dr. Bernardo Kastrup talked about, it's called filter hypothesis, where the brain is just the transceiver. It allows us to send out, allows us to receive in, but like the radio, it doesn't mean that the rest of consciousness or the rest of the band doesn't exist. That just is the area within which we're focused. And that also, and I think what she spoke to speaks to that consciousness is not engendered in the brain. It's the brain is within consciousness, not the other way around,
Yeah.
which I think makes sense if you look at metaconsciousness, metacognition. Not only do you have an awareness, but you're aware that you're aware, which now if the brain was creating consciousness, it couldn't be a source of reference for itself, right? And I think that it also speaks to, like, if you look at an old tube television, if you smash the screen and crack the glass, the signal that it received through the air is still going through it. It's still running through the device, but just like, let's say, like a trauma to the head or physical trauma to the brain, signals still received, but the interpretation and the portrayal of it may be, or the processing is affected by it. Now you plug out of the wall and disconnect it, like we assimilate to what you would call, for us, physical death. It doesn't mean that that consciousness or that signal doesn't exist anymore. It's just no longer running or flowing through that mechanism. So I think that
Interesting.
there's a lot of connection to that in consciousness study. We're big on consciousness and philosophy because that's where the meaning is. So many people who do paranormal investigating and research in Europe, in the United States, across the globe are doing incredibly good work. Really, really brilliant people. Yes, not all of them, because some people are going to go, well, what are some of these people? There are some ham and eggers out there who are not putting their best foot forward, or they're doing it for likes, clicks, follows, whatever. But there's a lot of really brilliant people out there doing this, and I think that the philosophy of it is what gives something meaning, to know the why and the value of it, because you can explain some things mechanistically, but not everything. And then those are the things you want to look deeper for.
Yeah. Do you think because some people with the paranormal, some people have a lot of experiences. Like I would say myself, I've had quite a lot of experiences. Do you think there's something in do you think there's something in that? Like, because I'm, and yourselves, if you're open to the paranormal and you focusing on it, you're constantly looking into it and stuff like that, more stuff seems to happen. Do you think there's something in that as well?
Absolutely, I think so. To go back to what I just explained with filter hypothesis, a great example. My son's mom, my ex-wife, who's a very good friend of mine and of hers, we have a very good friendship. She had something happen in her house where something moved on its own at night and fell off the counter or something, and they had a camera that caught it. And they would have entertained the possibility of the Smurfs breaking in the house and doing it, or SpongeBob, before they would have entertained the idea of ghosts or anything spiritual happening. So an example of where your focus is, or where you kind of, through your paradigm, filter out what doesn't fit into it. And then so I guess my point is that you may be having experiences, or maybe signs or certain things that are within your environment, but if it's not part of your reflective egoic experience where you're not tuned to it,
Yeah.
it's the same as like if you go outside during the afternoon, the stars in the night sky that you marvel at, they're still there, but you don't experience those. That's not part of reality during the day, because those things are obfuscated by the sun and the noise and the things going on. There's a lot going on, so you don't have that part of that experience, but it doesn't mean it isn't there. So I think for a lot of people, it speaks to the intent and then the focus, and that's what we often call the openness of it, but the intent and the focus, going to the gym with the intention of doing something and then producing or manifesting. I think that's the connection to that.
And I also think, like, with poltergeist, like, at times it may be that they're causing their own poltergeist, like, because they're creating it or whatever it is, or maybe
Yeah.
something is attached to them. So it can be the person themselves, even if they're not working that muscle for whatever reason that it could be. But yeah, I think that's part of it, is doing the routine, or maybe it's a hereditary thing, or whatever it is that's attracted to you, or whatever. Yeah. So I do think that it's part of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's like when you speak to someone that's living in a very haunted house, it seems to build and build and get worse and get worse and get worse. And the people, is it because you're giving energy to it? And if you're scared and you're showing more fear and it's getting worse, it seems to build.
That's very possible. I mean, and a lot of times, right? Don't the teams that do residentials a lot of times come back with it wasn't malevolent. It was just a message or somebody trying to come through or whatever it was. But it's not, unlike, and I hate to disappoint the TV and moviegoers, but it's not always some three-horned demon with a tail with spikes on it throwing you across the bedroom. That's not always what you find.
Yeah.
So I think that might be part of it. Yeah, I think if they're connecting to it and then it maybe, like you said, giving energy to it, that's all very possible through focus, because what you experience is what you amplify, what you focus on.
Yeah.
And then other things that we call subconscious are not, I don't think I think subconscious is almost like a misnomer. I think everything's part of consciousness, but those things, like, again, like the stars at night versus the day, I think those things are just obfuscated. They're pushed aside because your focus on your reflective experience is not encompassing that at the time. But some of those things exist on the outside, the periphery of what you're focused on, and sometimes those things will sneak in, and sometimes perhaps in dream states because they're close, but you've kind of pushed them out. And maybe sometimes because that's the meditative state. That's when your left brain, right brain, normal function of how things work is a little bit tuned down, right? It's they do a lot of times with meditation, visualization, with that whole idea with the God helmet. I think it's called brain training, or yeah, it's something. It's training of the brain, but it's creating that state, that meditative state where more of these things, I think, from unitary consciousness are able to come in. Dr. Castro likens consciousness, unitary consciousness, to a big stream, big body of water, and that our alters or our dissociative personal states is like a whirlpool, and that's what you reflect on. That's what's your experience. But sometimes there are commonalities, or some things are just on the outskirts, and those things will come in. But again, the same way with brain doesn't create consciousness, the same way that the whirlpool doesn't create the water, but it's part of it.
Yeah. It's just
And
all
anything
connected.
that you give focus to, and energy, it's gonna be more powerful, right?
Yeah, for
So even
sure.
with right, so even with a poltergeist, if it's that they're creating the poltergeist or feeding it more energy because they're afraid or whatever it is, anything in life that you give energy to or focus will become more powerful.
Yeah, for sure. Even if you're having a bad day, you can sort of
Right.
decide whether you're going to keep having a bad day, or you're like, no, I'm going to start laughing now, and change the mood, and changes
That's
everything.
right. That's
Right.
right.
Yeah.
That's a good example. Yep. That's
Yeah,
it.
changing what you focus on.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. So when you guys got together, what was you doing? Was you out investigating, or how did it start for you guys?
Well, I had been doing it for a number of years before we met. So when we first met, I got invited by some guy I knew from the gym who was doing a very low key, not high profile or not very intense residential case. And he asked me if I wanted to come along because I was very audio specific, not to the degree we are now, and we'll dive into that. But I was into I liked the ITC or instrumental transcommunication. I was big on the spirit box stuff and EVP. So we went, and so that was her first experience to go out in the field and do anything. And then we started looking for public events and groups that were running different events. And we'd been on now over the last couple of years, a couple of different teams. And we got to a point when we realized we love so many of these people that we have the opportunity to work with. We're going to be our own duo instead of being part of a greater team. And we're going to work with all these different people. We're going to learn from them. Hopefully we teach too. And we have a more cross-pollinated experience with the people in the field. So that's where from our website name, and our group is called Gonyak Paranormal, which comes from, if you look on the bottom here, Gonzalez, Yacovetti, Gonyak. She came up with that to use it for an email address. We did not go with Yak Gone because that sounds like a bug repellent.
Yak gone.
That's
Gonyak it
awesome.
is.
Yeah, that is awesome. So what sort of things do you guys experience? I mean, have you seen things? I know your sound is the main, but have you seen things?
She has seen more than I have.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? It's never been in an investigation.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's had, and she could tell you, she's had like a time slip kind of
Yeah, I had
of a
like
scenario here at home.
here, like a outer body experience. I had two of them here. And my first time, and they were both in this house. I get he okay. So I love where we live. I love looking at the skyline. So I'm upstairs and I'm brushing my hair, and there's a window there, and I'm looking at the skyline because I like brushing my hair. And I notice like the brush looks different. Like, what's wrong with the brush? So I'm looking, and I look at my hair, and it looks like a dirty blonde. So I'm like looking, looking like this. And when I look up, I still see the city. I still see it. But the Hudson River, like the house is closer to the river, it looks like we're closer to the river. And then this side of Jersey where we are, like it looks like a field where we are. There's no buildings. Like we live in front of this Japanese marketplace. That's not there. Oh, that's not there. So and I'm looking, but I still see the city. And then all of a sudden, everything is back to normal. And then I look, and I'm like, what the heck just happened? Like, I was like, I don't understand. So then a couple of months later, he buys me a book, The History of Edgewater, is where we live. And I don't read it right away. So I wait a couple of more months, and then I start reading it. And then it says that River Road is all landfill. The river used to come up closer so
Wow.
that freaked me out. That freaking freaked me out. I was like, when I read that, I was like, run. I was like, oh my God. So that
Wow.
happened. Yeah. So that's one of the experiences
How long did
that's
that last
happened.
for? Was that
Oh my God. It's so weird. I'm glad that you asked me that because I've thought about that. I have no idea. Like, I feel like that it could have been maybe a minute because I
it's quite long?
experienced a lot what seemed to me be a small amount of time. So I experienced a lot in a small amount of time, I think. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Yeah.
not really sure because there was so much
Wow.
that I saw. So
Did you
yeah.
was you looking around the room? Was you in the same room?
See, you know what's funny? I don't remember. Because I was so focused on what I was looking at, I don't remember what else was around me. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
remember the room because I was so focused on what was outside and what was going on. I wish that I would have. That's very good. I wish I would have. I did not do that.
And I think there was a connection to that experience too, because she was meditating for a while,
Heavily.
and she'll let her tell it, but she had seen a woman in period clothing with blonde hair that kind of matches that. And so I'm gonna let her tell it, but the connection for me, what this was, we do we'll explain what we do with audio, which is called STATICOM, which is derived from the old European method, direct radio voice, which predates any Frank's box, spirit box, ghost box. And we were doing what we call a digital seance, which we have a thing called the Digital Seance Initiative, where we do these public events. And the idea was because we would do direct radio voice, or now we don't have a radio, which we'll get into, for the white noise. And we would do these sittings, but at public ghost hunts, people would be opening up snacks and pouring coffee, and like this voice is coming from the beyond, and they're like, "That's okay, cream and sugar." Like, how are you missing this?
Yeah.
So we did a digital seance because I wanted that focus of, hands on the table, or just people really paying attention, their energy tuned in
Yeah.
collectively. So we did a digital seance earlier on when we first started doing them at White Hill Mansion in New Jersey, which it was built in 1723, which for here is very old. And it was her, Sam Baltrusis, and our friend Richard Moschella, who's a spirit artist. He sees spirit and he draws them. And nobody was affected the same way, but she was. When her face, I could send you the picture. Her nose looks like it's like a pig nose. It's like turned up, and her face looks almost like bony a little bit. This weird thing, and we think
was weird.
that, and then the lady with the blonde hair that she meditated and saw, we think it was all connected to that same thing with the brush.
Because
Wow.
after that happened in the hair and the city, whatever, and I found out that it was like landfill and whatever. So I decided to meditate and look for this woman. And when I meditated, I found her, but she was not happy to see me. And with that brush that I was telling you it changed, with that same brush, when she saw me, she threw it at me and then she disappeared. And I couldn't find her anymore. I started searching in my meditation. I was searching and I was seeing a lot of different women similar to her clothing, but I couldn't find her. And then that happened to me in
At White Hill Mansion.
at White Hill Mansion. So I don't know. We don't know. We feel like it's a connection somehow, because then after that I had like an attachment and I got taken care of. So I'm not sure. I don't know if maybe she was prejudiced. Really don't know what the deal was, but we have an understanding. Like, I won't bother you, you won't bother me, and I haven't had a problem since.
Wow.
So I'm not sure what her deal was, but she was not happy to see me.
Yeah.
So I don't look for her. I just leave her alone.
Wow. But you had a moment where like you must have been so connected that you came together.
Yeah, somehow. Yeah, and I don't think she
Wow.
wasn't having it.
Yeah.
Something happened. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, so that's that. And
So
it's weird because when we first moved into this home and I walked in and I'm going up the stairs, I'm like, I've been here before. Something's familiar about this home. I've been here before. So some months pass, and our friend April Bassett, who's a psychic medium, very good psychic medium, comes in. We're showing her the home. Said, let's go upstairs and show you upstairs. She's going up the stairs and around the same area where she's like, I feel like I've been here before. And she was right in the same spot. I said, that's what I said. The same thing in that same spot. It's so weird. So I don't know.
that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah, good luck getting guests to come over our house after
Yeah.
this show airs.
Yeah.
No one's coming over anymore.
Oh man. Did you say that happened again as well? There's another experience similar.
yeah, I had a which one? What was because I know I had another one, but I can't at this moment.
I don't remember the other one. I just remember those. The brush one, the first time you saw her with the realizing about
Oh
Hill, and then White Hill.
no, the one about It was here when that voice came through STATICOM.
Oh, you had one during that?
Remember up here that I was talking to Cherie and I had that experience that the memory came. Like there was another one. We had a experience. I had a coworker that passed and his voice came through STATICOM. And yeah,
Wow.
but I wasn't sure it was him until I had like an outer body experience here that
Oh yeah.
like I had that. It was just weird. I'm talking to one of our co-hosts from Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence, which is our podcast, and I'm talking to her, and I kind of felt it coming from the back of my head, and I was like there in the memory when he had told me jokingly that if he was to ever pass before me, he would definitely haunt me. Jokingly. And then I was sucked back into here, and that's when I realized that the voice was him. Like it was weird. It was just weird.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wow,
it was
man.
weird. Yeah.
Do you
So it
think
was
that's,
twice here.
yeah, that's so interesting.
She has
Scary
a
as
lot of
well.
she has a lot of things she brings to the table with this. That's part of it because I think we're part of the process when we connect to communicate. Again, our collective consciousness, our intent. So I think that even though she's not pursuing the gifts, as a medium,
Yeah, because I don't practice. I just let whatever happen
no,
happen.
and it
Yeah.
Like I
does.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah. When I was little, I pretty sure I'm astral projected. Like I'm pretty sure. Like people have described astral projecting to me, and I listened to them, especially when I first started with him, and I'm like, I did that. Like
Really?
I'm like, that's what it's called. Like
Yeah.
I didn't know. So I'm like, oh, it has a name. Yeah, like I didn't know.
So a cautionary message to the people watching who are paranormal enthusiasts, and not about the paranormal, about dating, because none of that was on her dating profile. None of that
Didn't get out there,
whatsoever.
shot.
I found it out later on when
Lucky
it
you're
was too
into it.
late.
Lucky you're
Yeah.
into it, man. Because I mean, if you
Right?
wasn't, yeah.
No, if I
Wow.
wasn't, it would have been a rocky road there. Yeah.
So
Wow.
so
But I think that not only that too, but and I've argued this with sound people, so I'll explain what Staticom is. But she by trade is a court reporter. So when I tell you when we review things or if we're doing a live spirit communication session that she hears everything, like if I want to say anything negative about her, she can't be in the house. Like she hears
Wow.
everything. And she's used to hearing people speak at different speeds, cadences, over each other, dialects, like everything. So that's her job. So we've had, and I'll explain what we do, but we've had an audio engineer background person from academia try to say, but first he goes, are you using like word banks and stuff like that, like an Ovilus or something? I went, no, we're just using white noise and we're filtering it in real time, whatever, which I'll explain. And he goes, oh. So then it's just artifacts and warbles of sound. Didn't you just ask me if I was using word banks because you heard words?
right.
So again, bias, right? Flips his argument. Now he goes to something else just to be able to dismiss it.
Yeah.
And so I put it in my fourth book just came out, which is called Paranormalization Memoirs of an Academic Layperson, which is how I categorize myself. I'm not a PhD or a master's, but I try to educate myself in what I do to the highest constantly, studying sound, quantum physics, like anything that might pertain to what we do. And I put in the book, I was like, you know what? An audio engineer can speak to the behaviors and the properties and the production of sound, but I have a court reporter, and her expertise is in listening and assessing speech and what is identifiable as speech. So I am perfectly comfortable in my lane with my co-pilot as her co-pilot because
Yeah.
that's what she does.
And it's
Wow.
just amazing that when we do the method Staticom, how many people hear the same thing at the same time.
Right.
And you're gonna tell me that we all heard it wrong, like we all had mass hysteria listening. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, that's one of the arguments in academia. There's a white paper. I'm a member of the SPR Society of Psychical Research over there. as well as academia online. And there's a paper that every so often will resurface on my emails going, hey, if you're interested in rereading, and it's got radio sweep. I'm paraphrasing, radio sweep as a method of spirit communication, and why it basically is not, legitimate or whatever. Like, that's the whole premise behind the paper. And it does this whole, when they do the group studies, and and 30 people will listen to the same thing, and 2% or whatever, or will hear the same thing, and which, if you look at at philosophy and your egoic experience and the psyche, and you look at the philosophy a lot of this stuff, as well as differences with males over 50 having high frequency hearing, deficit compared to a female. There's a lot of variables. You can't. It's absurd, but that that aspect of it kind of gets put out there all the time. The pareidolia, you're hearing what you want to hear. Mistaking warbles and artifacts of sound. I've gone my whole life without ending up dead or in prison because I heard stuff wrong. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess pareidolia and mistaking things exists, but our language, spoken words, is formed by allophones and phonemes in certain places at certain times to form certain words. That's how it works. So to suggest that every time everybody who has anything that's paranormal audio evidence is mistaken because it's pareidolia, and they're not always hearing what they want to hear, because most of the times you don't hear what you want to hear. To me, that's absurd. They throw that word around like WebMD throws around headache. It's a symptom of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it doesn't add up. Sometimes we don't even ask for something, and something comes through and it's pertinent to the environment or what we're doing or what we had talked about or something. So I'm not big on that whole hive mind. I need 14 people, like a jury, to tell me that I heard something. I've never walked into my supervisor's office and they went, "You're fired." I went, "What? A raise? That's fantastic." Never had that problem. So my hearing's pretty good.
Yeah.
I've identified the language that I know my whole life. So if I hear words coming through, yes, sometimes something could sound like a word if it's not clear enough, but you can do a voice print, you can speak into software, and if the spectrograph matches what you think you heard, those are the words you heard. You can look at the density, the tonality, the length, and clarity, and a lot of the characteristics of speech with consonants, vowels, diphthongs, and those are all represented in the stuff that we consider valid captures. So I don't mind sharing it and peer review, and I think that's important. But I think people get a little bit lost in this whole scientific method of having to share it amongst peers and having other people in the field have a stab at it. Because if those people are coming from a position of bias, it doesn't matter if Bigfoot hands them their car keys, they're not going to believe in him.
Yeah.
So how worth it is it to me to try to vet the authenticity of my work when I don't know the plethora of biases that I'm up against when different people are reviewing it and looking at it? But just for protocol, I have to put it out there to an academic organization or something and say, "This is a ghost talking. What do you think?" And then they go, "Oh no, oh yes, maybe, could be the fan, could be your stomach, might be gas." I mean, it's
Yeah.
so I like to do it with people that I trust their opinion, who are going to be honest with me, who are not going to tell me what I want to hear. But I also do trust, especially with her expertise in hearing, I do trust our assessment of language because I've done it my whole life.
Yeah. Can you tell us what Staticom is?
Yes. I guess we've built up enough
Let's
of a.
let's get into that.
Yeah. The Staticom is fascinating. The name is more recently something we adopted 6 years ago. I'm not a ghost box builder. For the last 25 years, because of Frank Sumption and the Frank's box, the sweeping ghost box has become synonymous with ITC, instrumental transcommunication, or TCI, transcommunication instrumental. It's been synonymous with it. Academia doesn't acknowledge it. They think that not only is there a false positive propensity, they also feel, like I said, that certain fragments of sound, have to be like allophones and phonemes have to be in a certain place, certain time, make certain words, that removes free will. So thereby they don't think it's legitimate. Those two reasons. I've heard ghost boxes work. We have some. I do believe they work. Here's the difference. I think the methodology inhibits itself. So STATICOM is derived from the earlier European method of direct radio voice, founded really by Friedrich Jurgensen, who's one of the pioneers of EVP. It was practiced by Konstantin Radove, who EVPs used to be called Radove voices back in the day. And Marcello Bacci from Grosseto, Italy, was one of the people who was really made famous for 20-something years of doing sittings where he did direct radio voice with a vacant AM channel in the short or medium wave band with a vacuum tube radio. So I saw that and I looked at her. I was like, how is nobody doing this? What he had in the 20-something years of doing what he did is unparalleled. I've never seen a ghost box do, no matter who built it, because I think it's the methodology that inhibits itself. I've never seen a ghost box do what he was able to do with better tech, more advanced stuff like we have now, all the lights and LEDs and the spring reverbs and all that stuff. I've never seen anything match the quality of real-time dialogue that he was able to get. With people from the SPR like David Fontana in the room, Robin Foy from the Skull Experiment was in the room. So in researching this and being fascinated, I came across a lot of the books. There's 3 of them. There's a 4th one that just came out now about Jurgensen by Dr. Annabella Cardoso, who's now in Spain. So, and she sat with all of those pioneers of EVP and ITC before any of this ghost hunting stuff in America became a big thing and spread it across everywhere. And now there's people out there in matching black shirts like bowling teams. Before any of that happened,
Yeah.
that's Jim Harold, by the way. I love that. So she sat with all those people. The gentleman who came up with the term ITC was a physicist from Germany named Ernst Sinkowski. For people who are looking for the science or the people in science behind it, he came up with the term, and it was to differentiate between record and review, which was EVP, electronic voice phenomena, and real-time dialogue with spirit in the moment. That's what ITC was supposed to be.
And they were using a vacuum tube radio, because I don't know if you
I
said
did mention that with Bocce, yeah.
Yeah, barren channel, no sweeping involved whatsoever.
Right.
Just the white noise of the radio. Shh.
Right.
That's all they were using.
And they began using that as audio support for EVP work, and then a lot of the messages in through Friedrich Jurgensen's journey would come out of the radio itself. And so then direct radio voice was born, and what these people got, the Harsh Fishback couple from Luxembourg, was unparalleled. So I'm watching that, and I'm not a ghost box builder. If I was soldering things, I would be high-fiving you with fewer fingers. Or they would be stuck to the table for
Yeah.
So I was looking for different things to learn, the practice to, to contribute to this field. I was fascinated by real-time dialogue possibilities. And I ended up getting to speak with, and I still to this day will text back and forth with Dr. Annabelle Cardoso. I think she is maybe the only surviving person from the old guard of that research. She endorsed my first book. Knowingly Talking to the Unknown was the subtitle. It was I can't forget the title of the first book, and I'm 4 books in.
That is the title.
No. The first book was not. This Paranormalization is the new book.
Oh, yeah.
The first book was Paranormally Speaking, Knowingly Talking to the Unknown.
Okay.
And she endorsed, she did an about the author for that. So talking to her, we got deep into doing direct radio voice. This is like 5-6 years ago. Everybody's doing ghost box stuff. Our podcast, she mentioned Entity Voices, Paranormal Evidence on Monday nights. We were doing a couple shows when we did live ITC. Our partners now in STATICOM, Tony and Cherie Rathman, are in Arizona, near Phoenix in the United States. And he built ghost boxes for 11, 12 years. One better than the next. Never sold one. It was always for research, which is one of the reasons we partnered with them. So we did a podcast, and everything we asked for came through clear as day out of the white noise on direct radio voice. So he's like, you got to show me how to do this. So we brought them on, and it became STATICOM because what we realized was that the ghost boxes are sweeping through broadcast to fragment the vocals. This is the idea what Frank Sumption had, which again was to communicate with aliens, not ghosts necessarily out of the gate. And that those tones were manipulated by the spirits to make words and stuff. And again, academia goes, well, how are they putting them in the right place instantly? There's no free will. And so that's how the method's supposed to work. And we realized we don't think that happens at all. But funny to me that that is how it's supposed to happen. And you go on websites that sell ghost hunting gear, and they're selling Faraday pouches to shield the spirit box from radio, because people think that's how you prevent false positives. Discernment is how you prevent false positives. The device is meant to sweep through radio. It's a radio. And they're putting it in a Faraday pouch, which conducts a signal around it so it doesn't go to the radio. But then what they do is they take a little orbital speaker, and they run a 3.5 millimeter jack plug into the Faraday pouch to the spirit box, which is shielded, and the speaker's on the outside. Guess what that wire running to the speaker is? There's your antenna that you just got rid of.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for me when I talked about philosophy and stuff of stuff. That these axioms, these just adages that are just accepted as part of the fabric of what we do, and that's one of them. And it drives me crazy because the methodology is meant to fragment vocals by sweeping. If you're shielding it from radio, you have nothing to sweep. And to my knowledge, nobody has ever put forth any data in ITC to suggest the advantages to sweeping pure white noise. The sweep was meant to fragment random vocals. If you're not getting random vocals on radio, there's no point in sweeping. What are you left with? White noise, direct radio voice, which predates all that
Right. So
and
it
outperformed it, in my
it
opinion.
defeats the purpose. So
Right.
you're left with just sweeping white noise. And if you listen to the earlier pioneers, the one that started all this, when the voices come in, they usually come in quicker than we can detect it. It's they come in so fast that
Yeah.
we can speak that fast nor hear it that fast.
Yeah.
So if you're sweeping the white noise, and if you think about that theory, then where is the advantage of sweeping just white noise if the voices are coming in quicker than you can detect it in the first place?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's illusory because they're creating the antenna with the wire they're running out. So essentially they think they're shielding from radio, but they're sweeping it. That's where the fragments are. So they're still getting it. So we call it STATICOM now because there were two instances. One, we were in a zinc mine in New Jersey below the surface of the earth. We were using a world band radio on a long wave frequency for the white noise source. And there was no, this is where radios and their signals and cell phones and their signals go to die. You get nothing. And we're under the surface of the earth, and we got voices. They said names, they were swearing
Wow.
at people. So that told us that the RF signal, the carrier wave that brings in the radio, is not necessary to the process. The other half of it was Tony and Sheree Rathman were doing an event out in Arizona, a Paracon, a convention, and they were speaking. And one of the things I love about Tony, besides that he never sold devices for profit, was he did what was, I thought, a very ballsy move. In front of a live audience, he uses as a source of white noise a sleep machine. Now, this is different than what we use now. STATICOM uses a white noise generator, which is why we changed the name. We didn't think calling the same process direct radio voice without a radio made sense anymore. So we called it STATICOM. So Tony uses a sleep machine, which is different than a generator that makes the noise in the moment in real time. Sleep machine is pre-recorded on a chip recorder. So in front of a live audience, he asks questions of spirit. He gets 3-word answer. Every 3 seconds, the answer comes around again. And
Same answer.
Same answer. And what he realized, you ever do an EVP session and like 4 or 5 people have digital recorders and only one person gets the voice because what we think is they imprinted onto that one thing? That's what happened. So some spirit cost him $25 on Amazon because he can't use that sleep machine anymore.
Wow.
But what it proved was the same thing that happened to us in the mine from a different perspective. You're not needing to get radio reception to get voices through an electronic device that has the white noise. And what we think happens is what's called stochastic resonance. And I'm going to let her explain where we see that with regard to the spirit box. So the spirit box has been around, the ghost box, for so long that it's very pushback friendly, I guess, as a concept to try to redefine how we think it works. I mean, they've been out there for 20 something years and everybody's got them. But those experiences, I think, taught us otherwise. So we think how this works is what's called stochastic resonance, or in some cases, maybe inverse stochastic resonance. White noise is every frequency we can hear, 20 hertz to 20,000. If something enters into that matches one of those frequencies, those two resonate stronger. The rest of the white noise stays at a spectral frequency of 1, which is all even, no amplitude, no variances. Even though it's random, the amplitude is equal. Those two get louder, so we think that's how the voices come through. What we do with STATICOM that's different, and then I want you to explain how we think that plays out with the ghost box. With STATICOM, what we do is different, is we took the cleanup, everything that people do with audio capture in the paranormal. They go home, they recordings, ghost box, EVP, whatever. They go home, they put it in software, they clean it up, they denoise it, they slow it down, they amplify it, they present it. ITC is meant to be dialogue. We go home and do all that stuff with our audio capture, even from a ghost box, the moment is gone. So we took all that cleanup and we took that process and we put it into the live moment. So we're filtering the noise, even though we're availing them to the white noise. We're slowing down live white noise, which to my knowledge in ITC had never been done before we had done it. And I'd ask ghost box people, how do I slow down live white noise? Not a sweep, because it's not sweeping. And nobody had an answer, and we had to figure it out. And then Tony Rathman ended up finding the specific component once I shared with him what I wanted to do. And to go back to what she said before, when Lourdes mentioned that these voices, and this was Constantine Rodove said it in one of the pioneers, that the voices come in not only faster than we can detect, they come in faster than the human vocal tract is capable of speaking. We had an experience in Vernon, New Jersey, where I believe it was my mother and grandmother, and I missed the whole thing in the moment. All I heard was on. And I said, if you know who I am, go ahead and say it. They said, Ron. And there's this whole message. 50% slowed down, clear as I'm talking now.
Wow.
In real time, I missed the whole thing, which means in real time, that thing came in super fast. There's no way I would have been able to hear it and understand it in the moment without slowing it down. From that point forward, we slowed it down. But it's when you hear the recording, I sound intoxicated and the voice sounds totally normal. So
That's
why we
incredible.
started slowing down live white noise, which to our knowledge, again, in ITC had not been done before. Now, with regards to the resonance in the ghost box, I explained this whole stochastic resonance and how I think this stuff is working with her. And then she looks at me and she gives me this idea with regards to the ghost boxes. And I went, son of a gun. That makes sense. And so I'll let her explain that part of it now, because I was fascinated.
Well, with the spirit boxes and the ghost boxes, when I first started in 2016, I noticed when I heard responses, it was never in the sweep. It was either below the sweep, very low, like you can still hear the shh, and the voices from the radio stations, but underneath you would hear something. Or it would replace the sweep, like Ron says, because it's so loud that it'll replace whatever.
Yeah, you don't hear the
You don't
anymore.
hear it. And so when I would hear responses, that's where I would hear them. And to be honest with you, since I was new, I was like, well, that's how ghost boxes and spirit boxes works. You know, that if it wasn't for that, they wouldn't be able to do it. But from doing STATICOM and working with white noise so much, we believe it's a theory of ours that ghost boxes and spirit boxes, they do work, but we don't think that they're actually using the sweep. We believe that they're using the white noise within the sweep. And that's why you hear, depending on where it resonates, is where you hear it very low or very strong, where it replaces the sweep.
Right.
So that's what we believe is going on with the spirit boxes. And that's why usually, I mean, I've heard spirit boxes spit out short sentences here and there, but for the most part, the answers are very short. There's a brevity to the answers, and we believe it's because it's sweeping and they don't have time to respond. They don't have time, they don't avail, it's not able to avail themselves to enough of the white noise at the moment to be able to give them or us the complete thought that they're trying to convey.
The sweeping part is actually creating the brevity. They might be getting longer messages, just like anything else.
But it's not coming
they're
through.
not coming through because of the sweep is truncating all the messages by shortening them. So that's a whole reimagining of how this concept with the spirit boxes and ghost boxes work, which may make us very unpopular or very popular. I'm not sure which.
But that's what we believe
through
is
our
going on.
experience, and again, with how they resonate in the white noise, even through that, getting voices under the ground, getting voices with a sleep machine. Now what we do is we have generators of white noise. We run it through an interface. It goes through software that filters it and slows it down in the moment. And the responses, I almost never have to slow something down in review. And if I do, it's because of sometimes there are certain words that may sound very like other words, and we'll slow it down maybe to really try to pick it apart. But
There's no chip recorder whatsoever now. It's just a white
Right.
noise generator that generates white noise in real time.
so there's
Wow.
no data. So the white noise is being
Right.
created in the moment. And we're going to be at I was telling you earlier off before the show, we're going to be at the Festival of the Unexplained at Bosworth Hall in September. I think
Yeah.
it's the 19th to the 22nd of 2024. And we're going to be doing live STATICOM sessions for a few different times, a few different days. And we're going to also lecture and speak to it. But closed circuit. So this is another thing too that drives me crazy is that we tell people who are not in the field, who are maybe cynical of it or just curious, whatever, we tell them that this is paranormal, this is supernatural. And what we're saying is that this is beyond measurable material science. It's being able to reduce this to the smallest particle and explain it. We don't know how it happens, right? It's beyond measurable science. And then when we try to prove it to people and we try to show them, look, no, it's fragile, it's legit. We're trying to cram this into a material science explanation. And that's why people are excited about quantum physics and quantum mechanics and stuff, because some of those may provide explanations for some of what's going on, which would make them normal and not paranormal. But I always find that nuts that we would try to cram this into a material explanation when materialist science cannot explain this stuff. When we run our system, it's closed circuit. There's no entry point for an audible person in the room or for any interference to contaminate it at all. The generators are hardwired through an interface, which is hardwired to the software, which comes out of a speaker. So when we say something, for something to repeat us, to answer us, to speak to, she came down one night late to get water. I was testing a couple things out, trying to improve it, which I do constantly. And she goes, oh, hi. She goes, I just came down. She goes, you know who I am? And it goes, Lourdes. Now, not a long
Wow.
message, right? But in
Yeah.
real time, and it's closed circuit. So how is something that doesn't receive a signal, doesn't record signal, that is completely closed circuit, that in some way, whatever the explanation is, whether this is some guy in Toledo,
Yep.
Ohio named Sam,
And
it's
he
defying
knew
physics.
how to pronounce my name correctly.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
said in the beginning, a
Yeah.
lot of
Like
people have
me.
trouble.
Yeah.
But no,
I
but
mean,
you pronounced it
I-
correctly. Maybe it
Only
was
some
you.
of us can do that. Yeah. Yeah.
But this
But yeah,
it defies laws of I mean, I hate saying laws, right? Because Rupert Sheldrake, biologist, UK, says that one does not go out in nature and find laws. I agree.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are very recurring patterns of reality that we experience, not necessarily laws. And I think that's a prime example. Now, some people, like this one guy, would try to tell us these are warbles and artifacts of sound. That is the most elaborate assembly of artifacts I've ever seen, because multiple people hear it at the same time, the same way, and
And
when
when
we
it
review it, it's got the characteristics of those same words.
and when it answers you, we were in
Yeah.
Massachusetts. I came out of the shower and
Yeah.
it goes, "Hi, Lourdes," and not to say that we're spoiled, but they say our names a lot. So I'm like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And it answered
Yeah.
back.
The voice goes, I'm good, babe. Love this bitch.
Yes. It goes, "I'm good,
Wow.
babe. Love this." And I was like,
I can sing you all these
Oh,
clips. And then
Yeah,
she's
that'd
like,
be
who am
amazing.
I talking to? What's your name? And it goes, I'm Avon Jennings.
Yvonne Jennings.
Wow.
But you're gonna tell me that's some smart warble? I mean, I don't know of a warble that can do that. That's crazy.
That's the thing. Yes, warbles and artifacts of sound can create the perception of a word, a couple words, but when it gets to the frequency of how often this happens, and the
And the dialogue.
and the depth of the dialogue and the relevance and the timing, and it's hard to chalk that up to
Yeah.
warbles and artifacts of sound at that point. We have a recording from the Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York, that we mentioned earlier, that it's 1 minute and 8 seconds of the same voice on a rant. Again, I can send you all these. I've never seen a ghost box do that.
No. No.
Box spit out a message that was 1 minute and 10 seconds long
It's a long
Mhm.
time. Yeah.
One or many voices, and it's just on and
Crazy.
on and on and on. It's the same voice. It's not pieced
Same
together.
voice. Same voice.
Wow, man.
So I
And,
think this is the closest to the phone to the dead thing that we're seeing so far. And there's other people doing similar stuff now since we brought back direct radio voice, who were very talented people. And I think that they're seeing what we're seeing is that what was done historically in Europe got lost because of the commercialization of the sweeping ghost box. And again, that works, but I don't think, and this could make me very unpopular in ITC, but I'm at a point now between how old I am and how long I've been doing this that I don't care. I don't think what Frank Sumption did with the ghost box was a progression of ITC. I think it was a diversion. I think it was a an alternative route. An alternative pathway. I don't think it did not best or improve upon what Jurgensen, Bocci, Cardoso, Sinkowski. I don't think it bested what they did at all. I think it's just a different, more immediate gratification means of communicating.
Yeah.
wow. It is super interesting. When you're over here in the UK I'm going to try and get to that function for sure because I want to see you guys do that in front. That's amazing, man.
Yeah,
So does this work every time?
that's a good question. It's pretty consistent. Yeah, it's pretty consistent with we do it at home all the time. We do regular sessions and sittings. We will never say that a location is haunted on the strength of getting anomalous voices because you can do EVPs anywhere. Um, you can get the voices, I think, anywhere. I think that one of the things that the pioneers of direct radio voice may have experienced was that a lot of times through the resonance they may have not been able to hear as much as they were getting, I think, because when we're filtering the white noise and amplifying in the moment versus doing a lot of that cleanup later on in review, I think that a lot of what they found later on or didn't hear in the moment or didn't think they were getting may have been there, but through bringing the tech part of it to the moment of contact instead of in review, I think that's opened up the perception and the reality of this stuff happening a lot more consistently.
I mean, what's been happening that we never thought of is when we first started doing this, we were doing it for the voices and the research and trying to figure out how does this happen, how can they hear us, how can they
Right.
the questions that people ask. But we started taking it to events and doing like talks and presenting Staticom, and then we started um realizing or getting into these situations where people's loved ones were coming through that were guests there. And it's been happening more and more lately where people are telling us that they're having life-changing moments. They've been getting, their loved ones, their children, their grandparents, parents, whatever it is, and they're getting relevant responses to questions that they only know
Yeah.
or recognize the voice, or they're saying a certain thing that they would only say. So that's what's been happening lately when we do it. So when you say if it works every single time, yeah, it works every single time. Not every single time do we get moments like these, but we have been experiencing those types of moments as more and more as we do it, which is one of the better things of the blessings or whatever it
Yeah.
is that you want to call it that has happened to us from doing this, because we love to be able to give that moment to someone.
We ended up on the path that Marcello Bacci was on when most of the people who came into his studio space in Grosseto, Italy were parents who lost children at a young age.
Yeah.
And he helped a lot of people with closure of those moments of hearing their voices or getting, proprietary information. So we didn't start out doing it. We just wanted to see if we could replicate what they did because it was fascinating to me when I saw what he was doing and Dr. Cardoso and Sinkowski, what they did with direct radio voice. And then I looked at her and went, how is nobody doing this?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not on TV. Got it.
Yeah.
And then flash forward, we would be at historical locations when it was like, somebody from American history, like Paul Revere lived here or whatever, and nobody's asking for Paul Revere's ghost. They're asking for their Uncle Steve.
They don't want to. They don't want to ask questions about it.
And that's where the digital seance stuff came through. Another, and it's funny again. This is why I'm huge on the philosophy of spirit communication and how it pertains to consciousness and everything else. Is that another axiom, another accepted belief in the field, is that spirits are all around us. They're everywhere. But some of those same people who will say that, if you said to them what we responded to you and said, does this work all the time? Pretty much, we're consistently able to connect. That seems to be completely in concert with the idea that spirits are all around you. If the method can work, that it would pretty consistently work at spirits all around you. But those same people would be like, oh, they said it works all the time. Nah, it's BS or not. They're lying, or it's not true, or it's hoax or whatever. But again, you can't hold, there's a big problem with continuity of thought. You can't hold one belief and then what makes sense in the continuity or continuation of that mindset, you can't drop off.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that. People are, a lot of times it's because I think they're trying to identify with material science and like, oh, our group is very, very scientific. We're very scientific. We go in, try to debunk everything. Well, that's saying you're going in with a bias. That's like me saying I'm going to a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-gendered gathering, and I'm going in to hate. But if I find people I love, that's convincing. No, you go in and see what it yields. The other problem with scientific method, when people say that they use scientific method or protocol, is that scientific method is to assume and lean into what is most probable by ruling out as many things as you can, and then leaning into what seems to be the most probable or likely rational explanation.
Yeah.
The issue with that from a philosophical point of view is that assumes that we know what every possibility is, and we don't think that we do.
We don't. Obviously, we don't.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on the other side. Like, who are we speaking to, honestly, right?
Yeah.
It could be spirit. It could be aliens. It could be dimension. We don't have all the variables, like he says, to know it all, to know what's going on or who we're speaking with.
I mean, if you hear a family member's voice or someone hears their family's, I mean, what more evidence and proof do you need, man? I mean, that if I hear like my granddad's voice, I mean, how can you? There's just that's 100%.
Mm-hmm. And then you think about it. Is it that your grandfather's in the room with you? Is he speaking to you from somewhere else and somehow able to connect? Like, you don't really know where that voice is coming from. Even if you recognize the voice, where is it really?
Yeah.
We think there's a certain non-locality to that too. Again, if spirit not bound to time space like we know it, another axiom, that's another accepted thing in the field, right? Spirits are not bound to time and space as we know it. And then they go, I'm finding out, or I'm going to figure out, some people will claim to have figured out what the ghost frequency is. This is where they are. Well, hold on a second. You can know on our side of the veil where we're best able to access or hear them, but you don't know what frequency they're on, because by definition, what is frequency? It's measures of oscillations per unit of time, oscillations per second. So if they don't have a measure of time, how do you have an identical matching measure of time with regards to frequency? If you're trying to say that they're on this hertz level or this kilohertz, you can't know that in the same mathematical, material, reductionist way, because you're saying they don't have time. So it has to be somehow, when it enters into our realm, that is maybe where it starts in some way interacting with what we know as physics or laws of physics, or the quantum entanglement or something like that. But it's tricky, because that's again another widely held belief, is they don't have time, but I'm going to find the frequency they're on.
Yeah. What's some of the best results you guys have had that for you are like, that's just, there's no doubt in my mind?
Some of the best results, I would say, well, there's two things I would say, and I know what her answer is going to be, so I'll let her elaborate. But the one from the Shanley Hotel, that 1 minute and 8 second voice, when I was reviewing that, she was in the other room, and I was cackling like a school kid. And she's like, "What are you laughing at?" I went, "The guy's still talking." And she went, "What?" I went, "I'm at a minute and change, and the voice is still going, just going and going and going." That and what I know what she'll say is, and she kind of brought it up already, was that we're able to provide these moments for people. We have a testimonials or a Staticom experiencers page on our website now, right? Which is filled with just very
Testimonials.
recent people's personal experiences with that. And that's really been the unexpected brass ring, I think.
I guess, yeah, if we're talking about personal experience, that is what I consider the best result from Staticom, to be able to help people, you know, have closure, or, hear that loved one, or whatever it is that they're trying to seek, search for. And when that happens for them, that's always a beautiful, thing.
Yeah.
If you're talking about evidence wise, I guess it would have to be that voice in the Shanley.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll send you all these files. I'll send you all
gotta
these
Yeah, I'd
files.
love to hear it. Yeah.
I love that voice in the Shanley because it is over a minute, someone speaking. But I do love when we get an actual dialogue. Like when something happens and a voice comes and you're like, oh
yeah.
my God, did that happen? And it actually responds to you. And then you respond, and you kind of have, like, even if it's for a couple of seconds, you having a 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences of dialogue there. I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
when that happens. That's like the best.
I'm glad she brought that up. See, we work well together because we are on the same page, but we remember different stuff. So when we mentioned from Direct Radio Voice, which is now Staticom, part of which happened through our partnership with Tony and Sheree Rathman under the umbrella of Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations, they're out in Arizona. So one of the things that happened was when he first asked me to teach him how to do Direct Radio Voice and to filter live and everything we were doing and slowing it down, he started doing it, and then it was working. He wasn't getting as many clear voices. He was still kind of trying to figure it out, and I was trying to help him with the settings. 3 days the most after I showed him how to do it, I get this female voice that comes through here and says, "Tony's your friend." And I went, "Tony's my friend?" And the voice goes, "Yes." And now I'm thinking, why would somebody make that statement? What are they getting at? And then the voice goes, while I'm thinking that, I'm saying, then the voice goes, "I'm asking." And so I went, I would agree. And then a little more dialogue happened. He says that right after that, within a day or so, the voices that were coming through for him exponentially got better. We think this is our educated or lack of education or speculative or however we want to categorize it. Our feeling is that this voice, whoever it was that we connected with, was basically saying, "This dude's doing what you're doing. Is he okay? Is he cool?" Because that, and I could send you that one too. It's
Wow.
it was clear as day, and it's very quiet. And you'll notice that when a lot of these clips, and I'll send these to you, there's no noise floor. You don't hear the white noise even between the vocals now. We've worked very hard at trying to silence that. So you'll hear some blips sometimes, but you don't hear the like of the white noise in between.
Yeah.
And this one was very, very, very quiet. And the voice says, "Tony's your friend." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And it
Wow.
was, "Yes, I'm asking." I was like, "What?"
It's incredible, man.
It's bizarre. We have a motion sensor light on the front porch of the house here that we can see from we're sitting here in the same spot doing settings or sessions. And it's off. The switch is off, and it doesn't work even if it's on. Like, we can go in front of it. I could light myself on fire and jump around. It's nothing. And we'll be doing Staticom, and all of a sudden we'll hear the word light or the light, and then it blinks and it comes on outside in front of the house.
Yeah.
Boy, are you kidding
Wow.
me? We'll
It's
come down at 2
crazy.
o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning to get a bottle of water. And as you're halfway down the stairs, there's a glass panel above the front door, which you can see out, and the light will blink as we're
Yep.
coming down the stairs. It won't
Those
do it the whole night.
stairs.
We're over here watching TV, nothing.
The same stairs,
Wow.
and it's in that spot where I said, I know I've been in this house before. It's usually in that same spot, and the light goes on. You can see it. I'm like, what the heck?
But we don't call our house haunted.
Yeah. That's one thing.
Man.
Not haunted.
Wow.
What do they say? Shit happens. That happened. Not haunted.
Wow, man.
I don't think it's enough to call it haunted.
Yeah. Oh, but that's incredible. Because as we were saying earlier about coincidences and stuff, I don't believe in coincidences anymore. I think there's far too many. And I mean, how can you explain the light working? I mean, that's crazy. Amazing. Absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. Because
Yeah.
for whatever reason, on the other side, they link up with our technology, and it's incredible, man.
And they've been doing it for years, like
That's
for
what-
a long time.
That's what we think. Even like with like the mobile apps, there's some mobile apps that are popular now. The other ones have been popular before. I don't think that they can't work. I think from a credibility standpoint, when you look at, again, because everybody throws around the word science and scientific and that stuff, and there's a difference between science, Rupert Sheldrake, method of inquiry, not an ideology. Big difference. When somebody says this stuff doesn't exist, it doesn't fit into what we can measure, it's BS, it's you're hallucinating. That's not science, that's scientism. That's different. But everybody throws that around. But the truth is, I forgot where I was going with that now.
I don't know.
I knew I was going to do that because I got excited about it. Well, just as an example too, with again another axiom I was just thinking about too with the ghost boxes, they came out with that the S box, which I think the Ghost Stop site came out with, and it's a good ghost box. It's got a good speaker, it sweeps well, the whole thing. And one of the features they added to it was to record the sweep and the recording internally.
It's a great idea.
I get it. Part of what makes spirit communication authentic, provable, vetted as communication is the back and forth. So when it does that, it doesn't record you.
That's the
So
flaw.
if you go, what am I holding? And it goes glasses, all your recording shows is that something said glasses, which somebody go, well, maybe that's the radio because you're sweeping radio. But if it's a radio station and you can hear you ask the question, now you have Q and A, right? Then you have timing and relevance because of your voice being on there too, which makes it astronomical that a radio station, which must have had a clairvoyant DJ because he answered your question at the exact moment that you asked it. And I tell people, if you think, even with a ghost box, that something coming through answers with timing and relevance is the radio, you need to find out when they're giving away cash.
Yeah.
Because your luck is phenomenal. I remember what I was going to say is that people throw out science and scientific and stuff, and she laughed because I always joke around about this when we speak. There's a lot of people who will go, well, one day maybe science will accept, one day science will explain, one day science is not one person. We have to stop saying science like it's one dude, right? Nobody went to school and thought that sex ed was one guy getting all the action. Nobody thought that. Maybe I did one semester. Long story. Point is, we have to stop doing that because we're framing what we do incorrectly. And then that's first of all, science being able to explain everything at some point is promissory materialism. That may never happen. But you can't say that because there are people who are in different branches of science, everything from anthropology, sociology, astronomy, astrophysics, engineering. It is various. They have different perspectives and opinions on this stuff, psychology. So you can't say science like what they're talking about is the accepted reductionist worldview, the world instantiation of science that says that everything's reducible to the smallest particle.
Yeah.
But that does not explain everything. And there's something in philosophy that's called the hard problem of consciousness, which talks to qualia, which are phenomenal experiences. Anytime you experience something, what you are aware of, that when you see, when you smell, when you taste, when you touch, when you feel, that's qualia. Those are your phenomenal experiences. That's not explainable mechanistically. You can't explain, if you look at the color of my shirt, red, and I look at this color, the vibration of the hertz levels of the color and then how it hits the rods and cones of your eye and processes, there's similarities in that, but people confuse the observation of something as the explanation of something. And then you might remember your first car that was a convertible, and you're driving along the coast and it's the red car. And I might remember the last time I saw a loved one in a casket, they were buried with a red cloak or something in it, and it's a sad memory for me. That's not instilled mechanistically in the visualization of the color.
Right.
And that can't be explained by reducing something, because you can't measure phenomenal experiences like that, like quality. That's not a measurable thing.
Yeah.
But that is a real experience that people have.
Right.
So I think that those kinds of things are very important when we're looking at this kind of phenomenology or the supernatural stuff that we study.
Yep.
Super interesting. This is a difficult question. And obviously we don't know the answer to this question I'm about to ask. But what do you think is on the other side? What do you think you're connecting with spirits that are in another realm? Or what do you think's happening? I know it's a difficult question because we don't know. But where are you right now with it all?
It's a good question, because
I always say, and I do believe, I think it's all happening. Like, I think anything is possible, and it's possible that all of that is happening. Maybe we're speaking to spirits and aliens. Who knows? Maybe heaven is in another planet. Like, really, like, we really don't know. So I always say, it may all be happening. Like, because sometimes we get voices that sound like our voices. It's our voices. And
Really?
then is it us in another dimension? Are they mimicking us? Like, what's going on? But it sounds like our voices. So I say it's a possibility that it all can be happening. What do you think? What do you think, honey?
I think so too. We've had voices say that they were alien. We've had mediums tell us that it was something that was, other dimensional or another extraterrestrial. Or I don't think we know, like you said. And I think that, when you get something that's proprietary as far as information of a loved one or something like that, I think you can connect it more closely to saying, I think that's them, that there is a continuity of life to it. But, with unitary consciousness, it's possible that it's just accessible and maybe it isn't them. It's hard to know. And again, this goes back to phenomenal experiences and the ability to be able to measure and assess these things. Because another thing that gets thrown out as scientific methodology is the repeatability of something in threes under the same circumstances. The problem with that is when you're talking about something like communication, you're talking about intellect, and when inherent in that is free will, right? If I call my father 10 times today and one time I get him on the phone and the other 9 times I don't, he's in a cell signal area that's weak, he's in the shower, he's in the bathroom, he's in a meeting, he's in a supermarket, and he's about to walk up to the register and he looks at the phone and goes, oh, I can't talk to him now. By that standard of measuring it, and again, this is scientific protocol as people will expect it. By that standard, my father doesn't exist, because I have a 90% fail rate and I couldn't do it 3 times under the same circumstances right here with my electromagnetic device that connects with somebody who's not in my physical space. Sounds familiar, right? Just like a ghost box or something. So I don't think that kind of repeatability. And then even when it happens, right, they took Marcello Bacci into studio spaces that had shielded him from radio RF signal. He couldn't receive signal. They took vacuum tubes out of his radio. He still got voices. So that's the other thing too, is with this whole peer review and academic people getting to review it and go over it and stuff. The other problem I have with that is that so there's a group that's doing a spirit communication endeavor, and they have this 10-point questionnaire thing on their website. And without naming them and without giving details, I took that 10-point questionnaire in my 4th book, Paranormalization, and I refuted every one of them. And it wasn't like shooting fish in a barrel. It was like shooting the freaking barrel. It was way too easy, because everything was generalized in what they were explaining, and it doesn't speak to the specifics of what it is we do. And I'm losing my train of thought again on that, because I get excited about something. I had like 3 different.
Well, stop getting excited, bro.
Where did I start on this? We were talking about
You have moved on to so many topics that I can't. I'm sorry. I'm
He's
sorry,
got
I
it.
have
baby.
so
He's
much.
got it.
I have so much to say, and I can't.
I told you, he has so much
I can't get it
information.
out.
Yeah.
He has so much that he just wants to share it. That he wants to share it all.
Yeah.
Then he loses his train of thought.
It'll happen sometimes because I'll think of something else that'll throw me off in a different direction.
All right.
But I know I was talking about scientific method and protocol. I know I was talking about that, and so that's part of the problem too. Is that takes away the free will of communication
Yeah.
when you have circumstances that play into it. So you cannot necessarily measure something that has free will and intellect
Yeah. 'Cause
by
when you
something like that.
when you talk to someone, it doesn't we could have this conversation, us guys, 10 times. It's never going to be exactly the same. It's always going to be different every time. So how can you measure? It's never going to be the same.
No. Yeah.
Right.
Super
Yep.
interesting stuff.
It's crazy. It's the stuff that we've been able to record, and it has been repeatable for us. That's what I was going to say. See, I always find my way
It's
back.
back. It's back.
I lose my train of thought, but I always catch the next one because
That's
there's always
it.
another one coming into the station. That's my other problem with the whole peer review. That's what I was going to say is that from that website with the whole 10-point thing, that one of the questions and one of the things that we'll hear is, was this stuff done at an accredited university under scientific protocols, under whatever? So I get the credibility aspect of it because there are people out there ham and aching this stuff, in a dark room somewhere in the basement of a castle. I get that. That's not all of us. So to speak to something with a blanket statement and dismiss it is really lazy. This is not a field for the lazy. If you want to debunk or explain away anything, you have to do it on a case-by-case basis. There isn't, and that's material science, looking for the general explanation of all existence. They want that one general explains everything in life thing. It doesn't exist with this stuff either. So you can't do that. So they'll say that the people out in the field don't have the credentials. And as a matter of fact, one of the academic people that we spoke to came up, has a term, I think he coined it, but if not, I heard it from him, called the academic layperson partition. The people who know scientific method and protocol have a lot of theories and ideas, and they're not the ones that are aggregating most of the data. It's the people that are the lay people, the ghost hunters, the paranormal enthusiasts, the investigators and researchers who are genuinely doing it well, who are out there. That's where most of the data is aggregated, and those two parties don't collaborate. There isn't contact and exchange of information and dialogue between those. Therein is the partition. That's where the title of my fourth book, Memoirs of an Academic Layperson, because that's a role that I'm trying to fill by being as educated and as knowledgeable as what I can be to the scientific protocols and standards and what makes sense. And at the same time, being plugged into the people who are genuinely doing good work. If you look at audio capture, anywhere on the planet, anybody's background, their heritage, their ethnicity, their gender, the characteristics of the data that they capture is synonymous regardless. And when you have consistency in the data, you have reliability in the data. That's important. And so when these people speak to the accreditations as a detriment to folks like us who maybe don't have a master's or a PhD, we're not behind the closed doors at MIT doing experiments with ghosts. I get it. First of all, field research is well accepted. You don't have anthropologists bringing entire societies into a lab. You don't have astronomers bringing planets into a lab. So field research can be done if it's done properly. So that whole bringing it into a lab with closed doors thing, that's an excuse, in my opinion. The other thing is, historically, people in paranormal research who have had those accreditations, Dr. Annabelle Cardoso, Dr. Ernst Zinkowski, the physicist who came up with the term ITC, Konstantin Radove, who studied under Carl Jung. These people, when they have the credibility, they don't get those same luxuries of being respected and going, now it's real. They don't get those. They didn't get those same respects at the time. They got dismissed as being quacks or having an agenda or being mistaken. So don't tell me that the reason my work is not credible is because I don't have a PhD, because if I did, you would dismiss it under another pretense.
Yeah.
That's my belief.
No, I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
And scene.
And the brand.
Drop the mic. Awesome.
That's what I believe. I think there's a lot of people in the field that are doing really, really good work. There's an ITC ghost box builder named Jay Prather who's doing this Project WorldGate thing. He's pushing the bounds. He studies quantum physics and stuff. That's fantastic. I think when people are trying to do those things, we should embrace that. And if
Yeah.
somebody makes a breakthrough, that's fantastic. That's another thing we're not big on. We're never involved in any of this what they call paradrama, negative speak about.
Yeah.
Like if I don't like somebody, I won't work with them. If I think their methods are sketchy or they're not a good person, I won't work with them. I hold myself to a standard through social media or anything else that I won't participate in that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of people who don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know there's a breakthrough. They want to find the truth. They want to find the breakthrough. And if you did it, eh, somebody
Yeah.
posted these pictures recently, this ITC method somewhere from Italy or whatever like that, and it was these faces like, and it's similar to water scrying, kind of like, and it was fascinating. They're really good. The one person's thread who would share this post, all these people were like, "Wow, that's fantastic!" Asking questions. The other one, who was the guy who posted it's a nice guy, but he's a ghost hunter from the States. And these other people were commenting on that's BS. I call hoax. All this negative stuff, and I'm like, because why? Because you weren't there. Because you didn't discover it. Because it didn't happen to you. One of the guys is well known for having put out an app for spirit communications. He's had people slinging poo at him that questioned his credibility before, and he's on there going, "I call BS." I'm like, do you not
Yeah.
remember? That's like a
Yeah.
racist going out there and propagating racism. Like, don't you know how it feels to be discriminated? Why would you
Yeah.
do that? You don't know that this person's work is not legit. You don't think so? That's good. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the same people will throw around scientific method and protocol and no, that's
Yeah.
bias, and you're not allowing someone else to shine because you're not in that spotlight. That's wrong.
That seems to happen in all aspects of the paranormal when it comes to cryptids, aliens, everything. There's always conflict in everything, really. Unfortunately, that's just the horrible side of people. But I think it's
I
great.
understand. I understand it. I mean, everybody, everybody wants to be accredited, revered. People get into the field within a year or two, and they want to be on the poster as they're appearing at an expo or something. Like, you haven't even done anything yet, And
Yeah.
if you are doing something, that shouldn't be your focus. We know people in the field 2-3 years that have made exceptional strides in the data that they log and how they do it and their methods, and they're not looking to be celebritized for it.
Yeah.
We were doing direct radio voice for a couple of years before anybody knew we were doing it behind closed doors. And then when the world shut down, when the whole COVID thing started, we were doing even more. Part of how we got out there more with this was when we partnered with Tony and Sri Rathman in Arizona. He's a marketing guy, and
Yeah.
and again, he never sold the ghost box. He never did ITC for profit. But through the podcast with them and through him like posting and sharing, and then we got well-known audio engineers who did stuff in Hollywood going, "How the hell are you doing that?" They were amazed at the clarity and the quality of the voices we were pulling in. And I think we built a decent connection by doing it for the right reasons. We had no
Yeah.
idea when we started this. I call it the turtle on the fence post. Have you ever seen that? You go, well, how did it get there? And what's it going to do next? That's kind of how it feels. Like, we didn't expect to be, this knowingly talking to the unknown Staticom. It's there's a 3-part docu-series on a streaming service called Paraflix that explains the evolution of Staticom and the whole direct radio voice thing that we've been going on about. I didn't expect any of that when we started. We were just curious to see if we could replicate what we saw Marcello Bacci and others do with pure white noise. And we bought a boombox world band radio that had long, short, medium wave. And I could show you early recordings, and a lot of it's you can hear kind of, but it was a crawl. It was a discipline. A
Yeah.
couple people were fascinated because they could hear stuff, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And explained it. And some of them went out and they showed me pictures. Look, I bought this world band radio. Perfect. That was it. They didn't stick with it because it was more of a grind. But I think for us that paid off, and I think now other people are starting to try to do stuff similar to what we're doing. And I hopefully hopefully this has an impact on the field of research. And if we make the next big breakthrough or already have, fantastic. If somebody advances it further than us because of what we did or parallel to what we did, that's good too. It doesn't mean that what we're getting is not, something that should be accredited. And hopefully we have influenced the field. I know that at some point we're supposed to be on with Dave Schrader on his show Paranormal 60, and he had lost his voice, so the original date we had was postponed. But he did a promo for it prior to that, before he knew his voice was going to go, and he said he thinks that this would be something that's going to turn the paranormal field on its ear. He said the
Yeah.
results are there. The results were there. He heard it at the New Jersey Para Unity Expo that we do an ITC exhibit room every year. He came back to hear it for himself. This is a couple months ago. And he
Awesome.
had a 10-15 minute dialogue with Spirit through Staticom
Yep.
that he did not expect to just happen. But I said, "Can you say hello, Dave?" And a voice goes, "Yes. Hello, Dave."
Yeah.
And then he asked questions, and it said something about messages and something else, and he was having a dialogue. And if he didn't have to
Wow.
leave, I bet he would have stayed there for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Is there paranormal teams out there using this now, using Staticom?
Not yet, and that's part of because of the way we went about this, because of how the process was birthed through the research. It's portable and mobile. We have brought it to New Orleans, to Mississippi. The documentary is The House in Between. We were invited to go there, and we ran Staticom there with the owner, Alice Jackson, and Brad Cooney, John Bullard, who were in the movie, both movies. Fantastic experience, wonderful people. It's portable. We didn't do it to go to market with it because this has been experimental from day one. We've had a lot of ghost box people and some people in the field who are asking us to share it, to explain it, to teach it. And part of the reason we haven't yet was it is still experimental. We're still, this very day today, I tried a new component with an audio thing to try to see if I could make the voices even better. It's always in development. So that's
Yeah.
part of it. So if we boxed it up and sold it, and then a week later came up with a way that just like blew the lid off of it, it would be worse than what the iPhones do. Like every 3 to 6 months, you have the best phone and then you don't. That's part of it. And then because it is a method, it's not a box or a device. It's time consuming. There's a gentleman named Keith Clark from Paranormal with a V, paranormal.com. He initially introduced us to the software component. Then we got from filtering live. Then we got away from it. We went back to just the radio. Then we came back to it. And when we came back to it, I took a deep dive and I tried a bunch of stuff that if you were using some of these things that are really designed for music production, I made a lot of really counterintuitive or counterproductive decisions. But I was experimenting with everything. And I think sometimes if you have a formal background in audio, you might not try certain things because it wouldn't make sense to you. But I don't have those protocols in mind. I'm trying everything.
Yeah.
And when we revisited this a couple years down the road with Keith, he looked at it, he goes, "Oh, you're doing that? You're running that? You set that to there?" Because it doesn't make sense almost. But I tried everything.
But see, the funny thing is, it does make sense. And the reason why I say that is because if you think about, we don't have all the variables, right? So if there's something in that's over there that we don't know here, even if it's counterintuitive or counterproductive for us, it may not be for them. So it makes sense to try those things because we don't have the whole picture. But go
Yeah.
ahead, continue.
No, well, I mean, that's why I tried everything. You're
Yeah.
just trying to figure it out. So we're at that point now when we're having people asking us about that. Some of the components that we run, you can get for free. Some of them we paid for and licensed. So I don't know that we can legally sell something that's a conglomeration of various products that were individually licensed, like there are now as elements of a bigger product. What we can do, and this is what we think we're going to do when we decide to go to market with this, is that we may do it as a consult where we can sell like a mapping of how to run it and what it is that somebody can follow and put together. but there's going to be an onus of responsibility on the operator to understand what they're doing and how to navigate it, because a lot of what we do, I found through trial and error. And then there was a period of time, not that long ago, actually, just as an example, and this is why it was good that we have partners. We started on a Windows Surface tablet computer, 8 gigs of integrated RAM. As soon as you turn it on, 2 or 3 of those gigs gone, integrated. As we built out STATICOM, when we would run it, the sound was starting to buffer and skip like that. And what happened was I would look at the corner of the digital audio workspace that we're using, and it says 96, 99, 98, and that was a percentage of the computer's resources that I was using. So it could not process. There wasn't a dedicated sound card, graphics, nothing. So I got a gaming laptop, which I thought, well, now I've got resources.
Yeah.
I'm good. What I didn't know was that some of the components before were 32-bit, not 64. There were some issues with having to recalibrate things. So for 2 weeks, and thank goodness we didn't have any events during that time, I probably retired from ITC every other day. I'm done.
Yeah, you kept
I'm
saying
out.
that.
I
Like,
contributed.
"You're not done."
Thank God Tony's doing this stuff. I'm done. Tony helped me get back on my feet. He helped me figure out recalibrating and resetting everything to work. And then it worked. 5 days later, I called him. I said, "Do you have time to do a video call? Because that's what we'll do." And now we both do this. And when we go over stuff, it's like an hour and a half on a video conference call. So imagine if we're selling this to people and they all want us to like Geek Squad and go on, and like walk them through everything. It's impossible. I don't
Have to have a helpline.
Oh my God. We go on this call and I showed him, I got rid of the noise floor where other than the vocals coming through, you don't even hear the noise. And he's like, "That's amazing. I can't believe you did that." I wouldn't have been able to do that if you didn't help me get back on my feet. So the partnership we have with them is good. They're also featured in the docuseries on Paraflix that explains what it is we do. But
So is inedible. What is the word?
inevitable,
Inedible.
evitable,
Edible.
evitable.
I can't say that, so I'm not even gonna try.
We are not hooked on phonics.
The point is that it's gonna happen. You're gonna
Yeah.
lose the voices. It doesn't matter the settings that we may provide you when we ever do the mapping. It's not gonna always work. It's not gonna always work forever because there's always a constant changing. So when you lose the voices, you're gonna have to try to figure out how to get them back because there's really not a geek squad for it because it's just too time consuming. And this is just my personal opinion. Perhaps the settings can be different for everybody. Maybe the settings that can work for us may not work for you. So that's one thing that they're gonna have to understand that. So when we came up with STATICOM, there was never a plan for marketing. So that part of it isn't there.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be, if we were to ever provide mapping for everyone when it comes time when they do lose the voices, because you're gonna lose them eventually. I'm not trying to put bad juju out there or anything like that, but it just happens, and you're just gonna there's not gonna be a geek squad really that you can just pick up and call because it's not working. You have to put the work in and try to get those voices back.
I mean, it's probable it did happen to us.
Inevitable.
They may not lose the voices for a time. Who knows? But the
Yeah.
other thing, I wouldn't want to discourage experimentation. Somebody may run
Well,
because look
yeah,
what happened. We
yeah.
learned the software from somebody, and we improved upon the efficacy of the method by developing and adding things to it that were not part of it when he first told us about this whole idea of just using the
Well,
software.
and when I
So-
say about losing the voices, because if you get a new laptop, I mean, the laptop starts running slow, whatever it is,
Right.
eventually you will lose the voices. For whatever reason, it could be a million reasons why.
Technical difficulties
Yeah,
will
it's
happen.
gonna happen.
Right.
And that's where you have to put in that
Not
work.
losing the voices like in a spiritual sense.
Yeah, that's
So that's part of it. So yeah, it wasn't conceived to go to market. And I guess it's hard. Some people don't understand. The other thing is that this is our legacy. We came up with, I mean, ghost boxes were all people were doing. Even people now who are doing stuff similar to what we're doing with filtering live and their own versions of it. I didn't see anybody doing any of that stuff when we started doing direct radio voice 5-6 years ago. Nobody in the States, at least, was doing anything like that. Everything was ghost box, building the better circuit, the silent circuit, the sine wave, everything. It was nothing at spring reverb, and nobody was doing that. So we do want, to be able to get this out there under our own banner, because we did work hard for it. We're not going to just hand 5-6 years of research to somebody because they give me $250 or whatever it is. The other element to it is that I guess along with that people don't realize is that ghost box builders who are building these devices are brilliant, and you're getting the fruits of their labor. You buy the device, and ultimately what people want with STATICOM 2 is they want the results. They want what it can do. But what they don't understand, I guess, is that when the ghost box builders do that, they're not walking you step by step through building the ghost box the way they do it with their circuitry and whatever their little techniques are. They're not giving away the recipe. They're giving you the final product and selling it. Because this is a method, we have no choice but to give away the recipe if we give it away, because it has not been boxed up. So that's the thing, is that it's constantly being experimented and changed. We're trying to develop it still. And we make it available. We do a lot of events. We do lectures and presentations at libraries, Paracons. We share what it can do with folks. We've done it live online before. But that's the thing, is that we don't disagree with that. It would be good to have other people able to do it, but we have to work out, I guess, the how and the when.
Yeah.
I guess, to do it. And then, like I said, there is a certain, when you fly out of the nest, we can't be responsible for troubleshooting everybody's technical issues, because it's a lot to do. Like with Keith Clark, who first showed us the software a few years back, and then we got away from it and went back to it. When I started having issues with the computers that I had to buy, the new one, he tried helping me also, and it was challenging for him because I had taken this in a different direction.
You had added a lot of things that he doesn't use.
Yeah, a lot of
So
things that he doesn't use. We're at
yeah, it's time consuming, you know.
Yeah, yeah. It's exciting. It's exciting what's to come, because you guys, you're building this, and it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. And
that's what we're
it's
hoping
very
for.
exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys when you come to the UK. That's for sure. I'm going to make sure I get there. I'd love to see this working in front of me. I'd love to listen to the audios. If you could send me that would be amazing.
I'll send them. Yeah, if you want to insert the clips into
Awesome.
a show or whatever at any time, I'll
Awesome
send you
stuff.
a few of them so you can see. But they're it's fascinating when you hear the clarity of the voices, and you know that there's no data, there's no radio,
Yeah, yeah.
and you can clearly hear that these are vocals that are coming
Super
through.
That's what's
interesting.
fascinating. There is no data in white noise. So where are those voices coming from?
Yeah.
Even if you don't understand them, and we do understand a lot of the voices, but even if you don't understand, where are they coming from? Why is that there?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we get some of those answers.
Yeah.
But super exciting stuff, guys. Can you tell the listeners where they can find you if they want to reach out to you or they want to get your books? Where can they find you?
I appreciate that. Well, first, for anybody who's on the other side of the pond, across the pond, in the UK, we would love to meet and see people at the Festival of the Unexplained, which I believe is September 19th to the 22nd at Bosworth Hall. I think it's not far from Birmingham, if I'm not mistaken. It's close to to that area. So forgive me on the geographics. We have not been there before. This is our first time going, but that would be a great time to not only meet us. I'll have my books with me. We're going to run STATICOM live at some investigations. We're going to run it and demonstrate it when we lecture. We'll probably talk about it on discussion panels. Our website is gonyacparanormal.com. That's GONYAC, gonyacparanormal.com. We have the testimonials there. There's some direct radio voice and Staticom evidence clips that are on the website. There's an events tab that shows like some of the stuff we have coming up, including Festival of the Unexplained.
Yes, so look them up for the UK People Festival of the Unexplained 2024.
Yeah, and they have the trio from the Holzer Files show, Cindy Kaza, Dave Schrader, and Shane Pittman are going to be there, which is a very unique thing to have them all at the same place. I know that there's the Danny Moss, who I know is very well known over in the UK, and I understand he's got a pretty solid reputation over here as well.
Daniel Class.
Daniel Class from the Hinsdale House and Ghost Finders will be there, and the other duo, Dr. Kate Sherrill is going to be there. Ghost Trip Investigation. I mentioned Danny. These two
Awesome.
chuckleheads are gonna be there.
Awesome.
And then my books are under, if you see my name, Ron Yacovetti, and there's a link, there's a little Amazon A on our website on gonyacparanormal.com, but the books are on Amazon also. There's 4 of them. They get a little bit into technique, methodologies. Some speak to consciousness, biocentrism, philosophy. I target thought provocation. That's really my goal. Like, I don't know it all. I don't think I know it all. But I learn a lot of different things that I dial and plug into. I have a background with comedy and satire, which is to me a form of philosophy which looks for hypocrisy, continuity of thought, for the purposes of levity. But I find with this, it helps me a lot because I find those things like those axioms and stuff I talked about. And so that's what I try to do in the books is I try to, if you read every book I've written and you think, I don't agree with any of this stuff, but you think you don't agree with any of it, you thought. And at least then I did my job, because that's what I'm trying to do is either you see what I see and you agree with it, or it makes you see something else that you think is the truth, but maybe what I show or teach rules out something. But that's really that's my main goal, is not to pontificate, but to preach what I've learned and what I think from the experiences that we've had, which some of it is in idea and concept, I guess would be cutting edge, the redefining of how we think the ghost box works, how we think spirit communication is possible, to how it connects to consciousness. And so there's a lot there, I think, that at least spark interest. So we're looking forward to being able to continue to go to events and spread that, and certainly to talk to it and speak to it. Direct radio voice, which led to Staticom, was born in Europe. It's not on TV anywhere. Well, it's going to be. But it hasn't been because nobody was doing it. So we're also looking forward to bringing back what for us was a European influence through Dr. Annabelle Cardoso to do direct radio voice, which led to what we're doing now. So we're looking forward to it's a homecoming for the origin of our method for us. And whenever season 4 of, if you know Death Walker, I know it's on Discovery Plus, I think there. It's on a lot of streaming services here. So season 4 of Death Walker, before it was Staticom, it was still direct radio voice. Nick Groff and Dan Class, who also works on that show as a producer, brought us out to Ohio, and we did an episode with Nick that's supposed to air sometime, I guess, in season 4, and he has a really good connection with spirit.
Yeah. So you can catch us in Death Walker, right?
Yeah.
Season 4, it'll be coming out soon. And then there's the GonyacParanormal.com, right?
Correct.
We have the ITC Invisible Art on
It's a Facebook page.
Yeah. And the Amazon, if you catch Amazon, his books are on Amazon, right?
And the links to all those things are on Cognac Paranormal.
On our website.
Yeah, on our website.
Yeah. And we dabble a little bit on TikTok and all that, but we're not really too, Instagram.
Instagram's the one.
Yeah.
I will share all your links in the show description so people can find you from there. Guys, thank you so much. It's fascinating talking to you, and I'm excited to see what comes next.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so
and thank you. And we did warn you that we are chatty.
I love that. That's what it's all about. You guys are welcome back anytime. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate you sharing your time and your audience with us, and hopefully people enjoyed it.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much,
much.
guys. I look forward to seeing you in the UK next year. And
Yes,
We're looking forward
let's
to.
make that happen. Would love
let's
that.
do it. Awesome.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I look forward to what's coming next.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Good night.